So I welcome you all to the module 5 of the course Applied Positive Psychology. So the module 5 we are talking about psychological strength and asset. So this is lecture number 14 part 2. So the lecture number 14 we are talking about different strength perspective. So in the part 1 we talked about Gallup strength finder. In part 2 of this lecture we will be talking about CAPP's Realise2 4M model. So this is another strength perspective, and we will talk about some of the concepts and some of the possible interventional ideas from this model. So in part 1 of this lecture we talked about Gallup strength finder or Clifton strength finder, two names for the same thing. We talked about the 34 strengths that are classified under this system into different themes, and we discussed how we can develop them and so on. So we understood some of the different aspects associated with that in the first part of this lecture. So in the second part, that is the today's lecture, we'll be talking about this another perspective of strength called as CAPP's Realise2 4M model. This is also a strength perspective that we'll be trying to understand psychological strength from this perspective in today's lecture. So let's start today's lecture. So CAPP's Realise2 4M model, it was developed by the Center for Applied Positive Psychology, which is in short called as CAPP. So that means Center for Applied Positive Psychology in the UK. It offers a unique framework for identifying, developing and applying strengths in personal and professional setting. So this is a approach which can be applied both personal life as well as professional setting. If you look at the Gallup strength finder perspective, it was more of a work setting context, the strengths were discussed. Now this is more of a general approach where this approach can be used in the personal life as well as professional settings. It was developed by the Center for Applied Positive Psychology in the UK, and we'll see what this approach is all about. Now unlike many strength based approaches which only highlight a person's talents, this particular approach categorizes strength in a way that emphasizes both the energy and frequency with which individuals use them. Now this approach is a little different from the earlier approaches that we talked about, either VIA classification system or Gallup strength finder. Here they also focus on to what extent energy is associated with different types of strength and the frequency of the use of this strength in one's life. So they use a little bit different perspective here. This distinctions allows for a more dynamic understanding of strengths, helping individuals recognize not only what they are naturally good at, but also what energy or drains them. So they are talking about strength in order to understand what kind of strengths energizes us, gives us more energy, and what kind of aspects of strength sometimes can drain us also from the energy. So that is a unique perspective in this particular framework. So this model comprises of 4 quadrants. If you see, the first one is realized strength. So we can categorize strength aspects into 4 categories, or here it is they are saying 4 quadrants, 4 categories. One is realized strengths. So there are certain strengths which we are realized, we'll talking about each of them a little elaborately. So realized strengths has certain characteristics: perform well, energizing, higher use. 4M are basically, we'll look into them, basically some advice given what should we do with those realized strengths. So they are saying marshal them means collect them, organize them and so on. We'll talk about each of them. So we'll here mostly focus on different categories. The first one is realized strength. Second is unrealized strengths. They are connected with certain characteristics like perform well, energizing. They are lower in use, and in terms of advice, maximize their use. The third category is learned behavior. Certain behavior we learn them, they are not natural talent. So they are related to well performance, but they are de-energizing. Their uses are variable, sometimes can be used more and less, and in terms of advice, they should be moderately used. We'll see all these things, why moderately used, why is something maximized and so on. The fourth dimension is weaknesses. So strengths connected, some opposite of this is weaknesses. We also have weaknesses. So weaknesses are generally related to poor performance. They de-energize, means drain our energy, they are not energizing situation. They are also variable use, and in terms of advice, they should be minimized in terms of use and so on. So this model says there are 4 possible categories of strength related activities. One is certain strengths are realized strengths, some are unrealized strengths, some strengths are learned behavior, some strength or lack of strength is called weaknesses. Okay. So let us see these different dimensions or different categories in detail. The first one is realized strength. Now what is a realized strength? Realized strengths are the talents and skill that individuals frequently use that energizes them. So these are realized strength, means the person realizes them. These are like people understand these are my strength and this is fully realized, and because they realize these strengths, they frequently use them also. So people use them very frequently, and the more they use, the more energy they get. So if when you use a realized strength, it also energizes you. You get more activated and you feel more motivated to do them. They are sources of both high performance and personal fulfillment. So realized strengths, the more you use them, they help you to perform better in the work life or personal situation, whatever situation, and they also give you a sense of fulfillment when you use them more and more. A realized strength is characterized by high energy, means when you use them, it gives you a lot of energy, you feel energetic by using them. High performance, you are more likely to perform when you use those strengths, and high use. Generally, since people enjoyed using their strength, they are more likely to use them more because these are already realized, they understand these are their strengths. In terms of advice, this model says, we'll be talking about this advice part a little bit more detail, but just to give you an idea, advice for this realized strength is martial realized strength, means use them appropriately for your situation and context. Use them more and more as possible. So that is the idea. So this is one category called realized strength. Second is unrealized strength. These are those strengths or talents that energizes individuals but are not frequently utilized. These are like people have not realized their full potential. They are still maybe dormant to a large extent. So when they use, they energizes people, they get a lot of motivation, but then they are not frequently used. So that's why there are unrealized strengths. An unrealized strength is characterized by high energy and high performance but lower use. When they are used, they lead to high energy, high performance, but generally they are used in a low frequency. So the advice for this is that maximize this unrealized strength, find opportunities to use them more because they are still unrealized. The more you realize them and use them, find more opportunities to use them, that is better for you in terms of performance and so on. So this is the second category. The third category is called as learned behaviors. Now these learned behaviors are skills that people perform well and frequently but do not find energizing. These are like certain behavior and skill that we learn. They don't come from our natural talent, but we have to learn them because of necessity. So we maybe frequently use them, but they are not energizing. But when we learn them, if you want to use them again and again, the use of this learned behavior don't energizes us, don't motivate us too much. They often been developed out of necessity rather than genuine passion or enjoyment. The strength, realized strengths and unrealized strength, those are like automatically there is a natural passion or enjoyment in doing them. Learned behavior, we learn them because there is a necessity for it. We may not enjoy them too much, we may not have passion for doing them, so they are not very energizing because they are not related to your talent. You learn them because there is a necessity to learn them. So a learned behavior is characterized by lower energy but high performance, obviously, because you have learned them because there is a necessity, so they can be connected to high performance, but you don't find energy when using them because this may not be connected with your strength. You just learn them because it is necessary, but they can drain you, while their use may be variable. So advice for them, moderately use, don't use them, overuse them because it will exhaust you. We'll see why it will exhaust you in the later part of this presentation. The fourth one is obviously the weakness, that means absence of strength here. So this weakness represents areas that individual neither excel nor find energizing. So generally these are those areas where you are not good at you don't have skills for them, you don't excel in those things, and you don't, obviously when you are not good at it, it will not be energizing, you will not find motivation and energy in doing them. So these areas may present obstacles to success and personal satisfaction. So when certain areas or skills you have weakness in certain areas, they can be obstacle in your success and personal satisfaction. You may not be satisfied, they will contribute to dissatisfaction and so on. So a weakness is characterized by lower energy and lower performance, while again their use may be variable. So weakness is obviously they will be lower energy, since you are not good at it, they will also lead to lower performance and so on. So generally advice for weakness is that minimize these weaknesses as much as possible, use them as little as possible and only where necessary. So obviously try to minimize this use, because this will lead to drain in energy as well as lower performance and so on. So these are 4 categories which are discussed in this model. Now this model has another part called 4M. If you see the name of the model is CAPP2 4M model. So what is this 4M? 4M are basically advice that we talked about for each of these categories, because these all start with M only. So this 4M's refers to advice that follows from this model. All this advice starts with M, so therefore these are called as 4M's. The first M is called Marshall, that means Marshall realize strength, we have already talked about, use them appropriately for your situation and context, means realize strength has to be collectively used and as much as possible appropriately used in wherever the situation. Second M is moderate learned behaviors, use them moderation and only when needed to it. So learned behavior should not be overused because they drain your energy. We'll talk about them a little later. Third M is minimize weakness. M is minimize weakness. So use them as little as possible because weaknesses may contribute to lower performance, low energy and so on. And fourth M is called maximize unrealized strength. You have to use them more and more, find opportunities to use them more. So that is something very, the kind of 4M that we talked about in this model. Basically these are advice for each of the categories. Now there is a dynamic nature in this model, Realise2 4M model. Model is very dynamic in a sense, and in terms of assessment tool also it's quite dynamic. Just think about what this dynamic approach means in practice. So unrealized strength may shift to become realized strength because your development has focused on maximizing them and finding opportunities to use them. So these strengths are very dynamic. These categories are not fixed. So today something is unrealized strength, tomorrow they can become realized strengths, convert into realized strength if you use them more and more. So that is what the dynamic means. So these categories can keep changing based on your use and understanding. So unrealized strength can become realized strength depending if you use them more and more. Realized strength that are taken too far, if you use too far in the sense overuse of certain realized strength can become a learned behavior category where you don't get further passion from those strengths because you have overused them. So when we use a strength too much, it becomes a draining and can shift to learned behavior. It can become, not necessarily it can become, it will become. So that is the meaning of dynamic. One category can shift into another category depending on the use and so on. So that is what the dynamic nature of this model is, that the strength are not very fixed categories, they can keep changing. Now weakness development when needed will hopefully increase our performance. Obviously when we can work on some of the weaknesses can also increase our performance sometimes of that weaknesses. As performance improves, some of the weakness might become learned behavior. So some of the weakness can get converted into learned behavior if you work on them and remove them. But generally energy will almost never shift. Even if your weakness gets shift into learned behavior, it will never be an energizing action because learned behavior are again like more of draining nature. And as situation change, so might the strength we use in those situations also change. It is called adaptation, something that we humans have been doing for tens of thousands of years through evolution. So as situation change, we keep adapt and things keep changing. So that's the idea of dynamism. So in practice, the dynamic nature of the Realise2 4M model means that it is ideally suited for use in performance reviews, coaching individuals and team development, and as a tool enable people to achieve their goals and objectives. So because of this dynamic nature, it can be very helpful to understand, categorize people's strengths and weaknesses. This model can be used for performance reviews, coaching situation, team development, team performance. So this can have a lot of diverse use in the practical settings. Now, as we have already seen, this model has 4M or advice in terms of what should we do if you realize that you have certain each of these 4 categories of strength that we all have. So advice, the summarized advice we have already given. Let us kind of little bit look into more details about each of these advice, because this has practical implications. The first advice that we talked about is that you should marshal your realized strength and align them to your goals and objectives. Means realized strength has to be marshaled, collected, used appropriately in every situation wherever it is needed. So that means what? One need to identify what you are naturally good at and energized by. So those are your realized strengths. So identify them, use them more by looking at what you are naturally good at and what gives you energy in terms of doing it, what kind of actions, and then actively use this strength to achieve your personal and professional goal. Actively use them to achieve your personal and professional goals. For example, how can you marshal your realized strength? For example, an entrepreneur with strong networking skill. So let's say this is a realized strength, networking skill. He or she can leverage this realized strengths and build relationship to expand their business, reach and secure partnership and so on. So entrepreneur using that networking skill, if it is a strength, and leverage that skill in terms of this realized strength, build relationship, partnership, expand businesses and achieve their goals and so on. So this is how they can keep using that whatever realized strength they have. So in terms of advice, this is how it can be looked at. Second is the advice that we already talked about is find opportunities to maximize your unrealized strength and use them more in achieving what you want. So strengths that are unrealized, we should use them more and more, maximize them, and then we can use them for achievement and so on. So these unrealized strengths are talents or abilities that a person possesses but hasn't fully developed because they have not used them properly. Tapping into this unlocked potential can lead to a lot of success and fulfillment in one's life. So the idea is maximize this use. For example, we can give an example. Let's say a professional with hidden strength in teaching, somebody who is a professional, maybe a corporate professional, whatever it is. Let's say they have some unrealized strength of teaching. Now this is not directly they are involved in. This is something, maybe they have strength in teaching people and explaining things and so on. This is a professional person, but he has an unrealized strength of teaching. He can develop this unrealized strength of coaching because he or she can use this strength of teaching in terms of use them in coaching, mentoring to enhance leadership skills and contribute to the industry. So even though the person is a professional there, because he or she has an unrealized strength of teaching, if that person realizes, can use them in terms of coaching other people, mentoring them in terms of developing skills and contribute to wherever the industry they have. So this can further expand their horizon of success. By mentoring junior colleagues and offering training sessions, they build expertise, strengthen their leadership presence and gradually become a key figure in knowledge sharing within the organization. They will expand their success in areas and horizons of so on. So this hidden or unrealized strength can be used. So if they maximize its use, obviously it will expand their horizons and their skills level, their successes, whatever it is. So this is how it can be used in terms of applied or practical example. The third advice that we gave is watch out to ensure that you moderate your learned behavior, using them as much as appropriate but not too much. So we gave an advice in this model. Advice is that learned behavior should be moderately used. They should not be overly used because they can drain your energy. So let us look into this aspect. So these learned behaviors are skills or behaviors that a person has acquired over time through practice, experience and training. So many times we may not have strength or certain skills naturally, certain strength may not be present, but people learn them because it is required in a job. Even though they may not have natural talent for it, so they learn it because it is required in a certain life situations or in a job or professions. So they learn it, practice it, develop it. So these are called learned behaviors. They are not innate strengths. Person may not be naturally good at these things, but they learn it because it is required. But are things people have become good at by practicing and so on, often due to necessity or external pressures. A lot of things people learn, a lot of new skills when they are placed in a job because it is part of the requirement of the job. Now, this perspective says this learned behavior should be moderately used because unlike strengths which energizes, so if you use realized strengths or unrealized strength, it gives you a lot of energy and you naturally enjoy them and it motivates person. However, these learned behaviors can feel draining even if someone is good at it because they have practiced it again and again. Overuse can lead to burnout because the person is not naturally motivated to do these things. They learn because it is necessary. But so if they overuse it, too much use it, it can be draining to that person. For example, somebody is a naturally introvert person, means the person is not very outgoing. Person enjoys his own personal space. They are not too much of talkative. They don't socialize too much. The person is a naturally, so that is natural tendency of the person is introvert person. Now they may learn to give effective presentation, meeting, which requires a lot of extrovert qualities, lead meetings and so on, because that is the requirement of a job. The introvert person will learn all this and give effective presentation, team, managing teams, talking to people. He can learn because that is the requirement, but naturally the person is not tuned towards this thing because the person is introvert. Okay? Now he has learned to become a lot of these behaviors which are actually natural for extrovert people, but he is not extrovert. So however, this requires continuous effort and energy. To do this thing, the person requires a lot of effort and energy because he is not naturally inclined to meeting people and having a lot of meetings and discussions and those things. But he does it because it is required in the job. So even if they perform well, they may learn them because it is required. Doing this too often may lead them exhaustion, affecting their overall well-being because they don't naturally enjoy them. So if it is too much required in that job, it will exhaust them because it is not naturally coming within them. They may not be highly motivated to do these things. They are doing it out of necessity, but too much of such requirement happens, then the person will feel exhausted, it will drain their energy and so on. So that is the idea why it is the advice that moderate use of learned behavior are good, excess use can drain the person. So that's the idea behind it. The fourth suggestion that was there, learn how to minimize your weaknesses. They don't have a negative impact on your performance. So minimize them so that they don't impact your performance negatively. So weaknesses are areas where a person lacks natural ability or motivation. Because ability, the person doesn't have ability also, motivation also, naturally they will not have motivation, which can hinder their performance. Instead of trying to turn weakness into strength, which is not easy to do, the focus should be on managing them effectively to reduce their negative impact. So manage your weakness so that that doesn't impact your performance and negative impact, so that you manage your weaknesses in such a way. So one can do this by finding ways to use your strength to compensate. So use your strength to compensate those weaknesses. That could be one way. Working with other people so that other people have strength in your, whatever weakness you have, other people have strength, so they can be used in your place. Collaborate with other people in partnership or in teams, or even learning how to develop weakness that is good enough. So even if you may not become expert in it, at least learn to the extent that it is good enough and it doesn't impact your performance too negatively. For example, how to do that? Let's say, give an example, a businessman owner who struggles with financial management. Somebody who is good at business but he struggles with financial management is something his weakness. He is not able to manage the finances properly, but he is good at business in terms of connecting people's networking and so on. Let's say this is the weakness of that person. How can he minimize the impact of this? he can minimize this weakness by delegating financial tasks to an accountant or using budgeting software, let's say. So this is for example, this is how you manage your weaknesses. You cannot yourself manage finances properly, so hire somebody or accountant who can do this properly, or you can use some softwares to manage it, so that your weaknesses doesn't come into the picture in terms of impacting your performance. So this ensures accuracy and efficiency while allowing them to focus on their strength. So the person can focus on his strength in terms of growing business and not be bothered by the weaknesses which can impact his or her business, such as business growth and strategy. Okay. So this is how each of these aspects can be utilized and applied in the daily life situation. So with this I stop here. Thank you.